Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the why, what, and how of newspaper reading. Today we will discuss the articles presented on the screen from the daily edition of The Hindu newspaper dated 1st October 2018, and the timestamping for these articles have been provided in the description box below. So let's start our discussion for the day. This editorial on page number 8 is related to the Monetary Policy Committee's meeting, which is scheduled on October 3rd to 5th. So, this article analyzes how the Monetary Policy Committee should decide the policy rates. So, this will form a part of the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic Economic Development, and it will also form a part of the General Studies Paper 3 under the topic Indian Economy. So, let us try to understand the key issues that have been highlighted in this article. Further, following three questions have been asked in the preliminary examination based on the concepts that we are going to discuss under this article. So first let us discuss the details of this article, and at the end of this discussion we will try to answer these questions as well. Now first let us understand the focus of this article. So this article analyzes as to what should be the stance or stand of the Monetary Policy Committee on the policy rates, whether it should increase the policy rate or whether it should decrease the policy rates. So in this context, this article highlights that there are compelling reasons for both increasing as well as for decreasing the policy rates. Hence, this article says that the Monetary Policy Committee has to decide on a tricky call, whether it should increase the policy rate or it should decrease the policy rate. So this decision on policy rates will be a tricky call for the Monetary Policy Committee. So first let us understand the case for increase in policy rate, which means that why should the Monetary Policy Committee increase the policy rates? So in this line, the article highlights that the headline inflation in India has eased to about 3.69% in the month of August. As can be seen in this map, the headline inflation has decreased. And the reason for this decrease in headline inflation is that there has been decline in the food prices in India. However, the article analyzes that it is expected that the rate of inflation would increase in future due to following reasons. The first reason is that the higher minimum support prices for the kharif crops would lead to higher prices for the food commodities. Also, there is an increase in the international crude oil prices and it would lead to imported inflation. And as we know that oil is a major input in all the production processes, and this will lead to an increase in the prices of majority of products in the country. So the article highlights that although the headline inflation has been falling, there are fears of increase in inflation due to the following reasons. One of the reasons is the increase in MSP for the kharif price and the increase in international crude oil prices. So the article says that due to this fear of increase in the inflation, the Monetary Policy Committee should increase the policy rates in order to contain the fears of inflation. And you should know that headline inflation represents the overall inflation in the economy. And in case of India, the headline inflation is represented by the Consumer Price Index. Earlier, the headline inflation was represented by the Wholesale Price Index. However, it has been now changed to Consumer Price Index. Now, you should also understand a related term called the core inflation. And simply, the core inflation is headline inflation minus the prices for food and fuels. This is because the prices of food and fuel are the most volatile ones. Thus, the core inflation excludes the prices of food and fuel from the headline inflation. Another reason highlighted by the editorial for increasing the policy rates is that there has been an increase in the interest rates in US. In this line, the article analyzes that the United States' Fed Bank has recently increased the policy rates in US by 25 basis points. The article further says that the higher interest rate in United States would normally lead to foreign outflows from India, and which can in turn lead to further depreciation of the rupee. This is because if the interest rates are higher in United States, the foreign investors will find it attractive to invest in the United States. And due to this, most of the foreign investments will flow to United States and move out of India. And due to this, there will be further pressure on the rupee and it will lead to the depreciation of rupee. So the article says that in order to check the foreign outflows and rupee depreciation, there is a compelling reason for the Monetary Policy Committee to increase the policy rates. The editorial further analyzes the case for decreasing the policy rates, which means that why should Monetary Policy Committee decrease the policy rates? And it provides the following reasons for that. The first reason is that the Indian economy is facing a liquidity crunch. And this has led to loan defaults by a number of non-banking financial companies like IL and FS. Further, the editorial says that this liquidity crunch and default by non-banking financial companies may have a domino effect on the health of entire financial systems, and which means that other sectors of the economy can also be affected due to this liquidity crunch. And in order to ease the liquidity crunch, the RBI has recently undertaken open market operations. And we learned about the open market operations in the DNS of 25th September 2018. Further, the editorial says that the RBI has also eased the norms for liquidity coverage ratio. And it says that this would free up to rupees 1.25 lakh crores for the banking sector. The editorial further says that the RBI is further expected to increase the liquidity in the economy. And this is a compelling reason for RBI to decrease the policy rates. So in short, the reason for decreasing the policy rates is that there is already a liquidity crunch in the Indian economy, and this has led to the default of various NBFCs like IL and FS. So next, let us try to understand what is liquidity coverage ratio. So the context for the introduction of liquidity coverage ratio is that there was a lack of monitoring and control of liquidity before the great financial crisis in 2008. And this lack of monitoring and control had actually led to the great financial crisis in 2008. So to improve the banking system's short-term resilience to liquidity shocks, the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision introduced the concept of liquidity coverage ratio. And this was a part of the Basel III norms, which was presented after the great financial crisis in 2008. So the LCR as a concept has been coined so that the banks hold sufficient reserve of high quality liquid assets, and this should be provided to the banks in order to provide liquidity during the times of stress. And these liquid assets should be sufficient to provide the liquidity to the banks for at least 30 calendar days or a month. Further, the high quality liquid cash assets are those assets that can be converted quickly into cash through the sales. And there is no significant loss in the value of such high quality liquid assets. Now, for example, the government securities or the G-Secs are considered as high quality liquid assets. This is because they can be quickly converted into cash and there is no significant loss in the value of government securities. And the bank should hold these high quality liquid assets or the government securities to handle the liquidity crunch or liquidity stress situations at least for a period of 30 days or a month. So according to this formula, the stock of high quality liquid assets divided by the total net cash outflows or the liquidity requirements of the bank over a period of 30 days should be greater than 100. And you should know that total cash outflows are defined as the total expected cash outflows minus the total expected cash inflows during the stress scenario or the stress period. So simply we have understood that the concept of LCR requires the banks to hold sufficient reserve of high quality liquid assets which can be used during the times of liquidity crunch by the banks. And this concept has been devised because the major banks faced liquidity crunch during the great financial crisis of 2008. Now let us understand what LCR means in the Indian context. So according to the RBI circular, earlier the RBI had allowed the banks to take into account 13% of their deposits under the mandatory SLR requirements for the calculation of liquidity coverage ratio. This means that earlier the SLR requirement, which is around 19.5% of the total deposits with the bank, 13.5% were considered as liquidity coverage ratios requirement. And SLR is the statutory liquidity ratio and it is about 19.5% of the deposits with the banks. And out of this 19.5%, 13% has been designated for the liquidity coverage ratio. However, a new circular has now allowed the banks to take into account additional 2% of their deposits, that is around 15% of the deposits under the mandatory SLR requirement for the calculation of liquidity coverage ratio. This means that out of the 19.5%, now the banks will designate 15% for the calculation of liquidity coverage ratio. Now, as far as SLR or the statutory liquidity ratio is concerned, it is the ratio of total deposits that a bank maintains in terms of cash, gold, and the government securities. So, for example, let us understand that if a bank has a deposits of around 100 rupees and if the SLR requirement is 19.5%, the bank maintains these 19.5 rupees in terms of cash or gold or designated government securities. Now, for understanding the utility of SLR, let us understand that by increasing or decreasing the SLR requirement, the RBI can influence the liquidity into the Indian economy, and thereby it can have an impact on the inflation or the growth in the country. Now, let us understand the rationale for increasing this 2% of the deposits. Now, let us understand the rationale for increasing the LCR with additional 2% of the SLR. Now, by this, we mean that the banks can now utilize the government securities which were earlier locked up under the SLR requirements for liquidating and generating liquidity in the times of cash crunch or the liquidity crunch. So, simply the 15% of the deposits which are calculated under the liquidity coverage ratio can be utilized by the bank during the times of liquidity crunch. And earlier, this was locked up in the SLR requirement, and it was not possible for the banks to simply convert it into liquidity. So, by doing so, the banks can improve their liquidity conditions during the times of liquidity or the cash crunch. Now, let us look at the questions that were asked in the previous years. In the year 2015, the question read, Basel III Accord or simply the Basel III often seen in news seeks to. So, the correct answer in this case is B. It seeks to improve banking sector's ability to deal with financial and economic stress and improve the risk management. Regarding the question that was asked in the preliminary exam in the 2014, the question reads, in the context of Indian economy, which of the following is or are the purpose or purposes of statutory reserve requirements? And this statutory reserve requirement is known as SLR in India. So the first statement reads to enable the central bank to control the amount of advances the bank can create. This statement is correct. The second is to make the people's deposit with the banks safe and liquid. This statement is also correct. However, the third statement, which reads that to prevent the commercial banks from making excessive profits, the basic aim or objective of the SLR is not to contain the profits of the commercial banks. So this statement is incorrect. Now, if you go through the options, you will find that options C and D can easily be eliminated. And we know that 1 and 2 are correct statements. So the correct answer in this case is B, 1 and 2 only. And the fourth statement reads that to force the banks to have sufficient vault cash to meet their day-to-day requirements. This statement is also incorrect because the purpose of SLR is not to meet the day-to-day requirements of the bank. Hence the correct answer is B, 1 and 2 only. Now regarding the question that was asked in the preliminary examination 2018, the question reads, despite having a high saving economy, capital formation may not result in significant increase in output due to. So the correct answer in this case was based on a concept, that is high capital output ratio. With this, let us move on to the next article. This article on page number 9 is related to Mahatma Gandhi, and this is in news because tomorrow is 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. So this will form a part of the General Studies paper 1 under the mains examination under the topic important contributors and contributions from different parts of the country. Now we will not get into the details of this article and try to analyze various questions that have been asked in the preliminary and the mains examination based on Mahatma Gandhi and try to understand how the UPSC generally asks questions based on Mahatma Gandhi. Now, the first type of questions that have been asked in the preliminary examination based on Mahatma Gandhi are the acts or events that happened during the Gandhian phase and the reaction of Mahatma Gandhi on those acts and events. For example, this question in 2015 was asked related to Rowlatt Satyagraha. For example, this question in 2015 was asked related to Rowlatt Satyagraha. So the question reads, with reference to the Rowlatt Satyagraha, which of the following statements is or are correct? And the statements that have been mentioned in this question ask about the reaction of Mahatma Gandhi on the Rowlatt Satyagraha. The first statement reads, the Rowlatt Act was based on the recommendations of the Sedition Committee. Now this statement is correct. And the second statement reads, in the Rowlatt Satyagraha, Gandhiji tried to utilize the Home Rule League. So this can be treated as a reaction of Mahatma Gandhi towards the Rowlatt Satyagraha. And you should note that this statement is also correct. And the third statement reads, demonstration against the arrival of Simon Commission coincided with the Rowlatt Satyagraha. This statement is incorrect because Simon Commission did not coincide with the Rowlatt Satyagraha and it happened during the late 1920s. However, the Rowlatt Satyagraha happened during the 1920. So the correct answer in this case is B, that is 1 and 2 only. So the first type of questions are related to the acts and events during Gandhian phase, and the reaction of Mahatma Gandhi on such acts and events. For example, this statement tells us about the reaction of Mahatma Gandhi towards Rowlatt Satyagraha. Let us look at another question of a similar type. Now, this question that was asked in the year 2012 reads, Mahatma Gandhi undertook fast unto death in 1932. So, this fast unto death was carried out by Mahatma Gandhi in reaction to which of the following events? The first option is that Round Table Conference failed to satisfy Indian political aspirations, and that is why Gandhiji took the fast unto death. This statement is incorrect. The second statement reads, Congress and Muslim League had differences of opinion. This statement is also incorrect. The C statement reads, Ramsay MacDonald announced the Communal Award. Now, this statement is correct, and you should know that the Communal Award had provided for separate electorates for the depressed classes. And we should know that before the announcement of Communal Award, separate electorates were already provided based on religion. Now, it is in this context that Gandhiji undertook the fast unto death and opposed this provision of separate electorates for depressed classes. This is because Gandhiji felt that by providing separate electorates to depressed classes, the British tried to break up the fabric of Hinduism in India. So this is another type of question that was asked in preliminary examination based on Mahatma Gandhi's reaction to certain events or acts. So such type of reactions of Mahatma Gandhi become important for us from preliminary examination point of view, and you should go into details of such reactions of Mahatma Gandhi. Now the second type of questions that have been asked in the preliminary examination based on Mahatma Gandhi are related to Gandhiji's own organizations, papers, or the protest movements that Gandhiji took out. For example, this question in 2011 was related to the organization of Satyagraha in the Kheda district of Gujarat, and this is popularly known as the Kheda Satyagraha. The question reads, what was the reason for Mahatma Gandhi to organize a Satyagraha on behalf of the peasants of Kheda? The first statement reads, the administration did not suspend the land revenue collection in spite of a drought. This statement is correct. This was precisely the reason for Mahatma Gandhi to organize a Satyagraha on behalf of the peasants of Kheda, because they were already suffering from a drought, and even after a drought, the British administration had not suspended the land revenue collection. So this added to the misery of peasants. And due to this, Gandhiji had to organize a Satyagraha. The second statement reads, the administration proposed to introduce permanent settlement in Gujarat. Now this statement is incorrect. Hence the correct answer in this case is A, that is one only. So this gives us an idea that we should also try to study various satyagrahas or the protests that were organized by Mahatma Gandhi. And we should also go through the important papers that were started by Mahatma Gandhi. For example, some of the famous ones are, for example, Harijan was a newspaper started by Mahatma Gandhi for the removal of untouchability. Another important newspaper that was started by Mahatma Gandhi is the Indian Opinion. And this was started by Mahatma Gandhi when he was in South Africa. Now, another type of questions that have been asked in the preliminary examination based on Mahatma Gandhi are the famous influences on Mahatma Gandhi by various revolutionaries or books. For example, this question that was asked in 2011 reads, Mahatma Gandhi said that some of his deepest convictions were reflected in a book titled Unto This Last, and the book transformed his life. So this statement talks about a book that is Unto This Last and the influence it had on life of Mahatma Gandhi. The question further reads, what was the message from the book that transformed Mahatma Gandhi? So the statement A reads, uplifting the oppressed and poor is the moral responsibility of an educated man. The second statement reads, the good of individual is contained in the good of all. And the third statement reads, the life of celibacy and spiritual pursuit are essential for a noble life. So all the three statements are correct in this context. So we should also try to gather knowledge about the various influences on the life of Mahatma Gandhi. For example, Gandhiji was highly influenced by the works of Leo Tolstoy. And it was due to the influence of Leo Tolstoy, Mahatma Gandhi had started the Tolstoy farm in South Africa for the cause of indentured labor in South Africa. So the three type of questions that have been asked based on Mahatma Gandhi are, first, the reaction of Mahatma Gandhi towards various acts or events during the Gandhian phase. Second type is related to Gandhiji's own organizations and various protest movements that were carried out by Mahatma Gandhi. Further, the famous papers or journals started by Mahatma Gandhi are also important for us from exam point of view. And the third type of questions are based on the various influences on the lives of Mahatma Gandhi. For example, the influence of the book Unto This Last was asked in the year 2011. Now let us try to understand the various themes on which the questions based on Mahatma Gandhi have been asked in the mains examination. Now this question that was asked in 2018 talks about the relevance or the significance of the thoughts of Mahatma Gandhi in the present times. So one type of question is the relevance of Mahatma Gandhi's thoughts in the present times. Now this kind of theme will also help you in writing essay and will also be important for you from the ethics point of view. Further, if you see the question that was asked in 2016 and the one that was asked in 2015 required you to compare the approaches of Mahatma Gandhi with that of Subhash Chandra Bose and the differing and divergent views or approaches of Mahatma Gandhi and B.R. Ambedkar on the question of amelioration of the downtrodden or the depressed classes. So this type of questions represent the comparative analysis of Gandhiji's approach and the approach of other famous freedom struggle leaders. So this theme is related to the comparative approach. Now this question that was asked in 2015 talks about the what if analysis. So this question reads, how different would have been the achievement of Indian independence without the Mahatma Gandhi? So this type of questions requires you to analyze the various directions in which the Indian independence movement would have moved if Gandhiji was not present in the struggle. So these are the three important themes that we have identified for the mains examination. So you should try and study about Mahatma Gandhi's role in freedom struggle based on these three themes. With this, let us move on to the next article. This article on page number 9 is related to the National Electric Mobility Program. So this will form a part of the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic General Issues on Environment. Further, it will also form a part of the General Studies paper 3 of the mains examination under the topic Environmental Pollution. Now previously in the year 2015, a question was asked related to one of the implementing agencies of Government of India. And the name of this agency was Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency Limited. So in this article, we will also talk about another agency which is implementing the National Electric Mobility Program. So let us try to understand the key points highlighted in this article as well as the background of National Electric Mobility Program. Now this article says that the Jharkhand state government has introduced the electrical vehicles for official use. So the author has highlighted that in the current scenario where the prices of fuel are increasing and the pollution caused by the fossil fuels burning is leading to climate change, this step is a welcome development, wherein a state government is taking the lead in switching to electric vehicles. Further, the author has also highlighted that the Prime Minister in a recently held summit had said that clean mobility powered by clean energy is our most powerful weapon in our fight against the climate change. So these are the three things that have been highlighted in this article. So now let us try to understand the National Electric Mobility Program in detail. Now regarding the National Electric Mobility Mission Plan, the Government of India launched the National Electric Mobility Mission Plan 2020 in the year 2013. Further, the aim of this program was to achieve national fuel security by promoting hybrid and electric vehicles in the country. Further, the target that was defined under this plan was to achieve 6 to 7 million sales of hybrid and electric vehicles year on year from 2020 onwards. And finally, the government aimed to provide fiscal and monetary incentives to kickstart this nascent technology. So the important points that should be noted is that the Government of India launched the Electric Mobility Mission Plan in the year 2013, and the aim of this plan was to achieve fuel security by the promotion of hybrid and electrical vehicles in the country. Now under this National Electric Mobility Mission Plan, the Government of India launched a scheme with the name FAME, and this scheme is known as the Faster Adoption and Manufacturing of Hybrid and Electric Vehicles. So the Government of India launched this scheme under the National Electric Mobility Mission Plan 2020 in the Union Budget of 2015 and 16. Further, this scheme will provide a major push for early adoption and market creation of both the hybrid and electric technologies vehicles in the country. Now, as far as hybrid vehicles are concerned, they use both the fossil fuels and the electric energy. That is why they are known to be efficient in terms of energy usages. Further, the electric vehicles don't use any fossil fuel. So that is the basic difference between the hybrid vehicles and the electric vehicles. Now in the year 2018, the Government of India launched the National E-Mobility Program. And this program aimed and focused on the entire e-mobility ecosystem, which includes vehicle manufacturers, charging infrastructure companies, fleet operators, and service providers. Now, this program will be implemented by Energy Efficiency Services Limited, and this organization will aggregate demand by procuring electric vehicles in bulk to get the economies of scale. So, this is the implementing arm of the National E-Mobility Program, and this becomes important for us from prelims point of view. Further, these electric vehicles that will be procured by the Energy Efficiency Services Limited will replace the existing fleet of petrol and diesel vehicles. And by the introduction of electric vehicles, India is expected to save around 5 crore liters of fuel every year. And this will lead to the reduction of over 5.6 lakh tons of annual carbon dioxide emissions. So, this will both be environment friendly and it will also help in reducing the fuel costs, which are a major contributor to the imports in India. Further, all the above programs will help in achieving the government's stated goal of ensuring by 2030 all public transport and 30% of private vehicles to be electric. So this is one of the goals of Government of India, that by 2030 all the public transport and 30% of the private vehicles will be electric. So these programs of Government of India will help in achieving these targets. And regarding the EESL or the Energy Efficiency Services Limited, it is under the Ministry of Power in the Government of India. So this fact is important for us from prelims point of view. Further, this organization is working towards mainstreaming energy efficiency and is implementing the world's largest energy efficiency portfolio in the country. Further, the EESL aims to create market access for efficient and future ready transformative solutions that create a win-win situation for every stakeholder. So this means that EESL is the facilitating arm of Government of India, which will help in improving the introduction of electric vehicles in the country. Now, why is EESL or the Energy Efficiency Services Limited important for us from prelims point of view? As you can see, in the year 2015, a question was asked in the preliminary examination. The question reads, with reference to the Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency Limited, IREDA, which of the following statements is or are correct? So this question was related to another implementing agency of Government of India. So such topics become important for us from prelims point of view. And the statements given are that it is a public limited government company, and the second statement reads it is a non-banking financial company. So both these statements are correct, and the correct answer in this case was C, both 1 and 2. And regarding such organizations, you should always go through the official website of such organizations. For example, about IRDA, on the official website, it is given that IRDA is a public limited government company and it was established as a non-banking financial institution in 1987, and it is engaged in promoting and developing and extending financial assistance for setting up projects relating to new and renewable sources of energy and energy efficiency with the motto energy forever. So this is one of the way of approaching such questions and understanding such topics. With this, let us move on to the next article. This article on page number 13 is related to an initiative of the Election Commission in regulating the role of social media in poll campaigning. So this will form a part of the General Studies paper 2 of the mains examination. And you should know that in the year 2017, in the mains examination, a question was asked related to various electoral reforms proposed by the Election Commission of India. Thus, such topics become important for us from mains point of view. So let us try to understand the key points of this article. Now let us understand what is the news about. The social media giants like Google, Twitter and Facebook have assured the Election Commission of India that they will not allow the platforms to be used for any activity which might impact the fairness in the conduct of upcoming elections to the State Legislative Assembly and the Lok Sabha. Further, in this regard, the Election Commission has asked the Google and social media platforms to keep an eye on the online digital advertising during elections, especially during the last 48 hours prior to the polling. So the Election Commission has asked the social media giants to keep an eye or track the online digital advertising during the election. And this is being done in order to ensure fairness in the conduct of upcoming state assembly elections and the Lok Sabha elections. So how will Google keep a track of the online digital advertisements? So it will do so by developing a mechanism which will ensure pre-certification of political advertisements by the Election Commission. So if any party intends to do online advertisements, it will require a pre-certification from the Election Commission. And this pre-certification will enable Google to ask the prospective client, whenever an order is placed, So whenever a political party approaches Google for its online advertisements, Google will be able to ask whether they have been pre-certified by the Election Commission's Media Certification and Monitoring Committees. Further, once Google acquires this data, it will share the expenditure details incurred on the Google platform with the Election Commission of India, and especially that expenditure which has been incurred in the last 48 hours prior to the polling. So this is the mechanism by which Google will be sharing the details of online digital advertisement expenditure with the Election Commission of India. Now, what are the expected benefits of this initiative? So this initiative will help in regulating the electoral expenses on digital marketing, especially in the last 48 hours of the elections. Further, it will help the returning officers of the Election Commission in calculating the election expenditure of individual candidates and political parties. So, in short, this initiative will help the Election Commission in regulating the electoral expenses of the political parties and the political candidates. Further, the representatives of Google have also met the members of the Umesh Sinha Committee. And this committee was established to suggest changes in the Section 126 of the Representation of People Act 1951. And you should know that Section 126 prohibits poll campaign in the last 48 hours before the election. So let us also understand the terms of references of the Umesh Sinha Committee, which has been constituted for electoral reforms. So the Umesh Sinha Committee will study and examine the Section 126 of the Representation of People Act 1951, and it will identify gaps and difficulties in order to regulate the violation of provisions, particularly during the last 48 hours prior to polling. Further, this committee will examine the type, category, or growth of communication technology or media platforms, and it will also analyze and examine the difficulties in regulating these media platforms. Further, it will try to understand the impact of new media platforms and social media during the prohibitory period of 48 hours. This committee will also examine the present provisions of the Model Code of Conduct related to the above mentioned issues and will suggest suitable modifications for the same. So the Umesh Sinha Committee will simply examine the present provisions of the Model Code of Conduct. It will also understand and examine the impact of new media platforms and social media during the election campaigning, and especially during the prohibitory period of 48 hours before polling. And this committee will provide suggestions for all the points that have been mentioned here. With this, we have come to the end of today's discussion. Now let us move on to the question for the day.